the European radio and digital audio show.
The experts on ConnectOnAir.
Welcome everybody to the radio of the European radio show. This year Germany is and Austria are the country of honor on the event, and we have the chance to welcome two speakers today. So Yvonne, Malak, so you are consultant for My Radio, is it correct?
My Radio is my company and I work as a consultant for radio stations, yes. Bonjour.
Bonjour. And with your colleague Torsten Birenheide, I hope I'm pronouncing correctly.
Yeah, you pronounce it correct. It's a really hard name.
You are Director of Programming at Radio PSR.
Yeah, that's
correct. And you have to catch your plane in 5 or 10 minutes. So let's start with you. So the two of you have been speaking on the radio show about the success of morning shows, right?
Yes.
Torsten, so what makes a successful morning show?
A successful morning show is made by real people. That's most important, because we live in times when you think about that in the near future, maybe Alexa or whatever, or any other artificial intelligence is doing radio. That's what some people think, but I think in the morning it's most important to keep real people, because only real people can connect with real people. So what we do is coaching our talents, keeping our talents, work with them, make them better, and have more listeners on air than 10 years before. You would suggest, if some other things are more important today, like digital revolution or whatever, you might think that listeners on air are not that important anymore. But for us, it's more than ever our key to success in the morning, to mirror the life of the listeners. That's what we do in daily business in our morning shows.
So first keeping people and keeping people live, I suppose.
Yeah.
So something else that you mentioned in the session that you held this morning was about identifying your targets.
Yeah.
And I think you gave a very clear example. You say that you just don't target by the age, but you need also to understand exactly who is your public in terms of, I don't know, like in terms of preferences. Are they more classic people or more
the values of, I call it the values of their lives, because it's totally different. I mean, you can be the same age, but one guy lives in a house with family, has a risk-free job, and it's pretty much, you would say, boring, but lots of people are, like us too sometimes.
So not you, I guess.
Yeah, and then you have on the other side one guy that is the same age, but he's a digital performer. He loves the risk. He's most afraid of being boring and whatever. So there's totally different types of people, and you can't put them in the same bucket just because of age. So you call it sinus milieus. It's sinus studies come from Heidelberg in Germany, and they're available for every radio station across Europe. It's even not that expensive, and you get an idea which target your station is actually trying to get.
And so by doing so, you don't restrict too much your audience in terms of number of people. Is it still possible to do radio for a very large audience, for a lot of different type of people?
I think in the morning, yes. After the morning, it's get harder and harder, because you have like the share of ear. It's really a battle about that. Take Spotify, take all the podcasts and everything. But in the morning, you have like the chance through the personalities to get a huge amount of people still. And I always say to the people, don't narrow your audience right now. It's not necessary. You can of course make a show where you just look for people that are interested in fishing and playing with dolls. I mean, it might be 3 or 4 people, and you do a perfect podcast for them, but please not in the morning, because in the morning you still have the big ratings. I mean, we don't have to make us smaller than we are. Sometimes I think, some people now make podcasts and they want to tell me, hey, I'm the big guy. No, you must be, right now you might be the more innovative guy. But still, I have the big ratings, and so it's like kind of, that's the thing we now have to deal with. And I think in the mornings you still have a huge range of people, and you have to kind of connect with them on a personal base and not too tight.
Let's talk about digital. I'm not sure you can hear me very well, because myself.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, great. How a radio like Radio PSR is competing in a digital age?
We have actually a pretty big company that supports us. It's called Regiocast. We have like lots of stations in Germany, and we are like far in front of the others while developing digital content and also developing on the technical side. I would say that our app, our radio app, is one of the best in Germany in encoding of stability, having the chance to put all the podcasts in your radio app that works well. And so we're really in front of that. But for us, it's always interesting to find new digital content that still fits our brand, because we're not going like that we say we do everything in the digital world, but we do things that fit our brand. And so of course Radio PSR has podcasts, but it's basically for us it's about raising childs, family stuff, those kind of things, rather than finding 3 people who are interested in fishing. So this is our topic, but we still do a lot on that case, because we believe that's the future.
And you were saying this morning as well that you were encouraging your radio DJ to encourage them to go
the digital audience.
Yeah, to grow the digital audience. Why is it so important?
Yeah, because when you convert the people into digital from FM into digital, they actually worth more. In terms of business, we all know that, because the companies, when they look for their target audience for their brands, a digital listener worth more, because you know more about him, and it's all about data. And so that's one side, and the other side is that also as a programmer, not only for business, but as a programmer, it's really interesting to find things out about people in real time. You know, it's like basically in our old business model, the media analyzers or whatever, they ask the people half a year later, what did you listen to? It's all memory based, and now you can see it in real time what people do, and that's really interesting for us also. So digital listeners are really worth more than the ones from FM.
But the people that are on digital are the same ones that the ones that are listening on radio. I imagine that the audience are younger on the digital platforms than on broadcast.
No, not necessarily.
No?
Not necessarily. You know, it depends on the thing you offer. In podcast, yes, it is like that. I personally think that younger people have basically more time for podcasts because when you then have a child and family, it's getting harder to take 1 hour off for listening. Maybe your wife would go, what are you doing? No, yeah, sorry, I can't help in the kitchen. I have to listen to podcasts. I think that might be critical. So some things you offer are just for younger people, but basically the listening to the morning show via app or the 80s stream or the modern music stream are basically, it starts with 14 years old and it goes all the way up the range to 60. Because the smartphones, I think it's nothing new anymore. With podcasts, you have to develop the audience in the 30 plus, I would say.
What are the major changes that you have done to your morning show on Radio PSR over the last few years, just to understand how it translates?
Actually, it's one thing is to convert the people into your digital into your digital offerings you make to the people. You have to do that in the morning, because in the morning you have the power. You have to tell the people that you have new streams and everything, so that is something you have to fit in your schedule. Some years ago it was only about listeners on air and some kind of funny stuff and commercials and news, and that's it. So I would say the presenters have to think more on their own. Where would it fit now to talk about the relaxed stream or whatever? When you come home, tune in again. That's one thing. And the other thing is basically encourage all the members of my staff to think more on their own. I would say it is like that.
So more independence?
Yeah, more independence in every single unit you have, because we have one unit that is just with the digital topics, and they meet every week, and I jump in there, and they're just basically on way different things than our presenter Steffen Lukas. He's doing his work for the show. So yeah, you have more and more basically different changes in the way you do radio today.
And do you think that because of the competition of podcasts, the morning shows must be more prepared in advance in terms of content? you have to be a bit more careful and have big editorial teams to prepare the content ahead?
No, I would say you just have to concentrate on what radio is. I feel sometimes it's right now that radio tries to be a little bit like Spotify, and Spotify tries to be a little bit like radio. And for me, it's like being somebody who builds trucks and want to be a little bit like a sports car. But maybe it's better to stay to your strength. And for me, in the mornings, I'm not competing with podcasts actually, but I'm competing with podcasts at the end of the day. And my ratings are getting bitten off by podcasts in the evening and even in the middays. So there's a fight about the share of ear, but I think not necessarily in the mornings, because podcasting and listening to a really good anchor that has personality and everything is something completely different.
One last question, and then I'm gonna let you
and then I go to the plane.
I'm gonna let you catch your plane. Have you observed any decrease in listening figures in the young audiences? Maybe it's not the target of your radio. Sorry, I don't know.
Yeah.
Have you observed some decrease in terms of listening figures?
In the younger audience?
Yes.
In Germany, not really. I mean, it's always something with time spent listening that goes away slowly because they do something else, but still also the younger people, they tune in the morning like it's like a...
I know the numbers exactly.
Really
70% of younger people between 14 and 19 listening to the radio every day.
Every day.
Every day, it's really
but
stable.
The problem is they listen only for short time periods. That's our problem.
That's the problem, but you still play a big part, and you have to see, like, you have to fight about the time spent listening actually in the younger audiences. That's the way you have to do it.
Okay, Torsten, thank you very much.
You.
From Radio PSR, and have a safe flight back to Germany.
Thank you so much.
Yvonne, sorry, it's not the right order to do it normally.
No problem,
you should have been the first one to speak.
Just because of the plane.
Just because of the plane. So, Yvonne, maybe our audience is not that familiar with the German radio landscape. So just in a few minutes, if you could just describe the current radio landscape in Germany, public and commercial stations, the recent changes in the recent years, I guess also the launch of DAB. So what is the situation in Germany?
The situation is that we have private radio stations, commercial radio stations in Germany since around about 35 years. That's when I began doing radio at a private radio station in Bavaria. And the landscape is totally different from federal country to federal country, since the radio laws depend on the federal government. This is not made by the state government. It's made by the federal governments. So you have a different landscape in Bavaria, for example, as in Berlin, or in Brandenburg, or Mecklenburg-Vorpommern, or Baden-Württemberg.
So you don't have any national networks then?
No, you don't have any national networks. This is that has to do with the Second World War, and after the Second World War, the Allied countries tried to avoid that there is one big nationwide radio station. So we don't have a nationwide radio network.
Even in the public sector?
Even in the public sector, the public radio stations also are. Different in the federal countries. You have in every federal country, you have one public radio station. But in Bavaria, for example, you have one public radio station and one federal-wide commercial radio station plus 60 small local radio stations. But this is totally different in Baden-Württemberg, for example. There you have one public radio station. Then you have three regional radio stations, three big regional ones. And then you have about 10, 15 local radio stations. And this again is different in North Rhine-Westphalia. You have one big public radio station. Then you have one commercial radio station that isn't the radio station, that only is a kind of deliverer. It's a station that delivers content to around about 50 local radio stations.
I see. Has DAB Plus changed anything to this situation?
DAB Plus didn't change anything. There are some federal countries where DAB Plus is has a share of, let's say, 10 to 15%. This is Bavaria and Baden-Württemberg, because politics loves to loves DAB in these federal countries, in these federal states, but in other it doesn't play any role.
I see. So you have been working in this industry for many years, and so currently you are consultant for radio stations. So tell us a bit about the type of services that you are providing to the radio station. I understand that you are focused mainly on the morning shows.
Yes, in the moment I focus on the morning shows. This is a topic I love a lot. I wrote a book about that. It's called...
Have you been yourself a radio DJ in the morning?
Yes, I've been a radio DJ in the morning. One of the most famous German morning shows at 104.6 RTL in Berlin. I was part of the cast of the first German morning show after the first German morning show sounding like the big American shows.
Okay.
We started that in the 90s in Berlin, and everybody covered it in Germany and then in other countries as well. And what I'm doing is, I was a program director as well in Berlin and in Baden-Württemberg for about 6 years, and I was pretty successful. So the mixture between the practical experience on the microphone, and the managing experience, the strategic experience as a program director, this is what I try to give to my clients. I coach program directors as well as morning shows or people that work in the on-air promotion department.
Okay, so which type of recipes you are bringing to your customers?
Oh, that depends. It depends on.
Are you working with different type of formats?
Yes, of
more
course.
More adults, more young.
Yes, of course. I work for Energy in Saxony, which is a very young format, of course. And then I work for oldies formats, for example, in Hamburg. And I work for a classical AC format in Hamburg, Berlin, Bavaria. So it depends on the competition. It depends on the format, and it depends on the competition. But what every format has in common is the most important thing is that they play the right music for the audience, in the perfect mixture for the audience, and that the presenters are well trained in selling the music. Selling the music and telling the audience what is the musical USP of the radio station. In Germany, it's still around about, during the day, 80% music and only 20% talk. Yeah, so you have to play the right music to be top of the market.
So you advise not only for the morning, but also for the entire music.
Yes, and yeah.
So how do you define the music programming? So with like selector type of, how do you define? You do some surveys in order to identify what the public wants to hear?
In the most radio stations I work for, we do research. We do really very expensive research, but in some markets you cannot live without research. In Berlin, if you wouldn't do research for your music in your radio station, you would die. It's not possible to be successful over there. Yeah, everybody does research, so you have to know exactly what your audience wants, in which mixture, and in what they want, and in which mixture they want it.
So, what are the most recent trends in terms of music programming? You would say in terms of styles, in terms of change of taste.
Yes, I mean the taste is a little bit difficult in the moment if you are a programmer and a music director, because people love a lot those electronic or dance music. Yeah, that's what they love a lot. But for my ears, it's difficult to listen to that for longer time periods. Yeah, and you have two trends in the moment. One trend is very driven by current music. People love the chart music a lot. This is one group of people, and then you have the other group of people that love a lot the 80s music. A big trend is music from the 80s. We even have a lot of radio stations based on 80s music. So you have those two different target groups in the moment.
So still 80s, because in France we had some gold type of stations that were playing a lot of 80s, and they are progressively moving more to more recent decades, like 90s, in order to make their audience a bit younger, because commercially it seems to be more efficient, and you don't have this trend, so the 80s are still very, very popular.
The 80s are very popular since it was an era where you really had great artists and the best music, like Bryan Adams, Bon Jovi, Elton John, Tina Turner, Rod Stewart. And what is funny about that 80s-based radio stations is that they have a young audience. in average. The average audience of some of my clients that play 80s-based music programs is, let's say, around about 40 to 43, and the average age of audiences from classical AC radio stations playing more current music is the same. It's also 40, 38, 40, 43, so this is not a big difference. And you have a lot of younger people discovering the 80s in the moment and loving the music. So I would recommend the radio stations not to play more 90s and more current songs for different reasons. First is, we'll always have a big community loving the music of the 80s, since it was a really great area and there is really great music in the 80s. You have a lot of variety in the 80s. You find a lot of great songs in the 80s. And it's a question of, what do people expect from your radio station? When they tune in your radio station to listen to the 80s and then they get the 90s and the current stuff, you will lose them. I'm sure about that.
Okay, so let's say I'm a radio station. I have a very unsuccessful morning show. Okay, I'm calling you. I'm calling you for some help. What are the steps that you are following to redefine a strategy for the radio?
First, I would listen to this morning show, of course, yeah, and see if there are talents you can develop. Can I develop the people that are in this show? What can I do with them? What kind of segments do they have? Maybe it's about the segments. What kind of clock do they have? What kind of music do they play? This is what I listen to first. Then, of course, I listen to the competition. What is the competition doing, and where maybe is a market niche? Yeah. If the competition is funny morning show, and you already have 2 funny morning shows in the market, you don't need a 3rd funny morning show. Or if you already have 2 man-woman based morning shows, you don't need a 3rd man-woman based morning show. So this is what I look at. Then I compare the morning show to the format of the radio station, to the strategy. Maybe they don't have the right personality fitting to the strategy. Yeah. For example, if you have a man-women based adult morning team and you play very young music, that doesn't fit together, for example, yeah. And then I try to train the presenters and see what are their special characteristics and which of those characteristics can do something for a radio station on the air, and how are the presenters' perspectives on the different topics, characteristics, perspectives, competences for topics, and from all that I try to develop a plot for the show. Yeah, like for example, I have one show in my clients. They are married, and first the general manager didn't want them to tell on the air that they are married, but then we decided, let's tell that they are married, let's tell the people that they are a family, that they have a little son. This is really a USP within the market, and with the new plot on the morning show. So
OSP stands for?
Pardon?
What OSP stands for?
USP, unique selling proposition. Okay. Your singular market niche. Yeah? Okay. So this is the market niche we found, and since we have the new plot on this show, the whole radio station is much more successful.
I see. So your clients are only in Germany, or you are also?
I have some clients in Austria and Switzerland.
Okay. Thank you very much, Yvonne. So
Thank
Yvonne
you for
Malak,
having me. Thanks a lot.
Enjoy the salon and see you soon.
Merci beaucoup. Au revoir.
Au revoir.
3 days completely devoted to the radio media and digital audio.
Stream live on ConnectOnAir.com.
.com.
In partnership with Broadcast-associés and Vizion'R.
And broadcast in Paris on DAB+ by Towercast.